The Wasp Factory, Chapter 6, The Skull Grounds, Part 2. So that was my mother's last visit to the island, and the house she left to the island and the house. She left one dead, one born, two crippled for life, one way or the other. Not bad score for a fortnight in the summer of groovy and psychedelic love, peace, and general niceness. Old Saul ended up buried in the slope behind the house, in what later I called the skull grounds. My father claims that he cut the animal open and found my tiny genitals in its stomach, but I never did get him to tell me what he did with them. Paul, of course, was Saul. That enemy must have been, cunning enough to transfer to the boy. That was why my father chose such a name for my new brother. It was just lucky that I spotted it in time and did something about it at such an early age. Or God knows what the child might have turned into, with Saul's soul possessing him. But luck, the storm, and I introduced him to the bomb, and that settled his game. As for the little animals and gerbils, white mice and hamsters, they had to die their muddy little ploppy deaths so that I could get the skull of old Saul. I catapulted the tiny beasts across the creek into the mud on the far side so that I could have funerals. My father would never have let me start digging up our graveyard for family pets otherwise, so off they had to go, departing this life in rather undignified garb of half a badminton shuttlecock. I used to buy the shuttlecocks in the town toy and sports shop, and cut the little rubber end off, then squeeze the protesting guinea pig. I did use one once just on principle, but as a rule they were too expensive and a little too big. But through the funeral, through the funnel of plastic until it sat around their waist like a little dress. Thus, thus flighted, I sent them shooting out over the mud and the water towards the suffocating ends. Then I buried them, using as coffins the big matchboxes we always kept by the stove, in which I had been saving for years and using as toy soldier containers, model houses, and so on. I told my father I was trying to get them over to the far side to the mainland, and that the ones I had to bury, the ones which fell short, were victims of scientific research. But I doubt I really needed this excuse. My father never seemed bothered about the suffering of lower forms of life, despite having been a hippie and perhaps because of his medical training. I kept a log, naturally, and therefore have it recorded that it took no less than 37 of these supposed flight experiments before my trusty long-handled trowel in biting the skull ground's earth skin struck something harder than a sandy soil, and I finally knew where the dog's bones were. It would have been nice if I had been if it would have been nice if I had been a decade to the day since the dog died that I exhumed the skull, but in fact I was a few months late. Nevertheless, the year of the skull ended with my old enemy in my power, the bone jug pulled from the ground like a very rotten tooth indeed, one suitably dark and stormy night. By torchlight and stout stroke, the trowel, the I am struggling today. By torchlight and stout stroke, the trowel, while my father was sleeping and I should have been, and the heavens shook the thunder, rain, and gale. I was shaking by the time I got the thing to the bunker, nearly frightening myself to death with my paranoid imaginations. But I prevailed. I took the filthy skull there and I cleaned it and stuck a candle in it and surrounded it with heavy magic, important things, and got back cold and wet to my warm little bed safely. So all things considered, I think I have done all right. Handled my problem as well as it could have been handled. My enemy is twice dead, and I still have him. I'm not a full man, and nothing can ever alter that. But I am me, and I regard that as compensation enough. This bringing dog stuff this burning dog stuff is just nonsense.